What if the one destined to set you free was also the one who could shatter your world? This is not just a tale of forbidden love. It is a story where shadows breathe, where chains bleed with memory, and where every heartbeat could tip the balance between salvation and ruin. She was hidden away, erased from history, meant to live in silence, but destiny has a cruel patience, and when her true mate finally discovers her prison, no darkness will be able to contain the storm. If you are ready to feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every impossible kiss, hit subscribe and let the story begin. The walls hummed with low magic, a sound like distant thunder trapped inside stone. She traced her fingers across the cold surface, feeling the echo of spells that had been carved there long before she was born. "These walls remember me better than the world ever will," she whispered, her voice almost devoured by the silence. Chains of light and shadow bound her wrists, not tight enough to wound, but tight enough to remind her. She belonged to the prison. From beyond the veil of stone, the forest pressed in. The smell of pine and damp earth leaked through tiny cracks, a constant reminder of what lay outside. She had never touched the wind, never let rain fall freely on her skin. Her world was this hollow, its air heavy with dust, and the faint sweetness of herbs her guardian left behind. But tonight was different. The chains pulsed faintly, warm like breath against her skin. Something was stirring in the fabric of her cage. She closed her eyes, searching the silence. For the first time, she felt not just the emptiness around her, but presence. Her thoughts spiraled. Who dares reach for me? Do they come to end me or to claim me? The chains tightened once, as if warning her, and then fell still. Her breath caught. Somewhere far away, a stranger was moving closer, and the prison itself knew it. Far from the hollow prison, a man woke from a dream that had chased him every night for months. His chest was damp with sweat, and his hands still ached, as though he had been clutching phantom chains. In the dream, a woman cried out without sound, her eyes like stormlight, begging for something he could not name. He sat upright. This was no dream. It was a summons. He left his chamber before dawn, saddle heavy with weapons and maps. The air outside was sharp with frost, and mist clung to the earth like secrets refusing to rise. Each breath he took carried a taste of iron, of inevitability. He had been told since childhood to beware the call of shadows, but the call had come for him anyway. As his horse carried him down the forest path, whispers rode the wind. His father's voice haunted him. "Love will destroy you, boy. Better to wield a blade than to bare your heart." Yet the mark burned on his wrist, the same spiral he had seen glowing on the woman's chains in the dream. If she is real, he thought, gripping the reins until his knuckles whitened, then she is mine, and if destiny wants to break me for it, so be it. Deep beneath the council chambers, candles hissed in bowls of black salt. Figures cloaked in smoke gathered around a table of obsidian, the air trembling with ancient power. The eldest spoke first, voice brittle as shattered glass. The seal quivers. The girl stirs. The mate awakens. A younger voice laughed softly, but it carried venom. "Then we must remind destiny who holds the chains." His hand swept over the surface of the table, and in the dark reflection, the imprisoned woman's image flickered like a dying flame. Beyond the chamber, armies of spectral hunters began to stir. Their bones rattled like iron chimes, their hollow eyes glowing with silver fire. They had slept for years, waiting for this moment, the breach of prophecy. But not all in the council agreed. One figure lingered in silence, hood drawn low. Beneath the cloth, tears carved paths on a woman's cheeks. She was her guardian, the one who had raised the girl in chains. Her heart beat against duty, whispering treason with every breath. She woke with the taste of smoke in her mouth, though no fire burned inside the prison. A tremor rippled across the chains, and for the first time, she felt warmth not her own. She staggered back, heart racing. "Who are you?" The words escaped as a whisper, though she did not mean to speak. Beyond the walls, a man pressed his hand against stone slick with moss. He didn't know why his chest tightened, only that something inside this forgotten ruin pulled at his soul. His palm burned. "Can you hear me?" His voice cracked through the air, uncertain if it would carry. Inside, she froze. The air itself vibrated, carrying his voice into her hollow. She pressed trembling fingers to the chains and whispered, "You are real. Gods, you're real." For a heartbeat, the prison itself groaned, the chains pulling taut like strings of a dying instrument. She fell to her knees, the weight of hope crushing her harder than despair ever had. "If you are my death, then come swiftly. If you are my freedom, don't let go." The forest erupted with spectral howls. He jerked back, sword drawn, as shadows poured from the trees, eyes blazing with silver fire. They had found him. His blood chilled, but the warmth pulsing from the mark on his wrist anchored him. She was near. He would not retreat. Inside the prison, she heard them too, the hunters of bone and shadow. Fear clawed her chest, but another fire rose in her veins, sharp and unfamiliar. She clutched her chains. "Not him. You will not take him from me." For the first time, sparks of raw magic leapt from her skin. He fought brutally, every strike of his blade echoing in her chest, as though their souls moved in tandem. But for every enemy he cut down, two more rose. His arms ached, breath coming ragged, when suddenly, the ground itself split. Roots surged from the soil, glowing with her rage, ensnaring the hunters. From within her cage she fell to her knees, stunned. The forest had answered her. "I'm not only a prisoner," she whispered, trembling. "I am the storm they feared." The guardian stood at the edge of the council chamber long after the others had left, her body still wrapped in the suffocating scent of burnt salt and extinguished candles. She pressed her palm against the obsidian table, feeling the cold seeping into her bones. For years she had told herself that silence was mercy, that keeping the girl hidden in chains was the only way to spare her from a greater doom. Yet tonight, as she looked into the reflection of her own face on the black stone, she no longer recognized the woman staring back. Her oath had become a noose, tightening with every breath she took. She walked the hidden corridors toward the prison, steps echoing like drumbeats of judgment. Memories clawed at her. The night she first held the baby in her arms, swaddled in crimson silk, her cries softer than a whisper of rain. "Forgive me," she whispered to that memory, though the child could never hear. In the present, the girl was no longer a helpless infant, but a young woman whose eyes carried storms. The guardian felt the weight of all her lies pressing down. Inside the prison, the girl stirred. She sensed her guardian's turmoil even before the door creaked open. "You come smelling of smoke and secrets," she said softly, eyes narrowing. The guardian winced, unable to meet her gaze. For years, she had been the only human presence in the girl's life, and now her silence felt like betrayal made flesh. "I swore to keep you safe," the guardian said, her voice hoarse, trembling between duty and desperation. "But safe has become another word for broken, and I cannot watch you break any longer." Tears glittered in her eyes, falling silently to the dusty floor. The girl's chains pulsed faintly in answer, as though they too were listening to the confession. Far across the realm, the mate knelt in the ruins of a burned village, the stench of ash and charred flesh thick in the air. The hunters had passed here before him, leaving only silence and ruin. He clenched his fists, guilt knotting in his stomach. He was too slow, always too slow. The spiral on his wrist glowed faintly, a reminder that the chain of fate was tightening whether he was ready or not. From the shadows of the ruin, a figure approached, the mentor once revered as savior of the realm. His cloak dragged ash along the ground, his staff humming with a resonance that set the mate's teeth on edge. "You are walking into a grave, boy," the mentor said, his voice neither cruel nor kind but heavy with inevitability. "The girl is cursed. To free her is to break the world. Will you sacrifice kingdoms for a single heartbeat?" The mate rose slowly, sword steady in his hand, though doubt gnawed at him. "If she is cursed," he answered, "then I'll carry the curse with her. If she is broken, I'll break beside her. The world has demanded my obedience since I was born, and I am done obeying." His words rang out, louder than he expected, trembling with conviction and fear alike. The mentor's expression barely shifted, but his eyes flickered, not with anger, but with a strange grief. "Then I will not stop you with words." He raised his staff, and shadows coiled like serpents, ready to strike. "I will stop you with everything else." The earth cracked beneath them as ancient power unfurled, the air tasting of iron and storm. Back in the prison, The girl clutched the bone key her guardian had given her, its surface rough and strangely warm, as though carved from something still alive. She turned it in her palm, every angle catching faint glimmers of light that did not belong to the hollow. For a moment she allowed herself to imagine what freedom might taste like. Rain on her lips, earth beneath her bare feet, a sky not bound by stone. But the chains quivered, alive with their own cruel intelligence. They sensed her defiance and lashed against her wrists, burning her skin with searing light. She screamed, falling to the ground as the smell of scorched flesh filled the air. The key slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. She gasped, pressing her forehead against the stone, tears mixing with sweat. "I was never meant to survive this place," she whispered brokenly. "But gods, I still want to fight." Her guardian rushed to her side, panic in her eyes. "The chains will kill you before they let you go. You are not ready. You must wait until he comes." But the girl's laughter cut her words, laughter bitter as shattered glass. "Wait? All I've ever done is wait. Wait to breathe. Wait to be seen. Wait for a life that isn't mine. I am done waiting." Her voice rose with raw power, and the walls themselves trembled. In that moment, the chains shifted. Not breaking, not loosening, but changing. They wrapped tighter, their light darkening into molten shadow, as though preparing for war. The guardian staggered back, horrified. These were no longer chains of containment. They were becoming weapons. The mate stumbled into the ruins of an ancient temple, his body bruised and bloodied from the clash with his mentor. His sword arm shook, but he pressed onward, driven by the spiral's relentless pull. The temple's stones whispered beneath his boots, as though remembering footsteps from centuries past. The air reeked of moss and wet stone, laced with faint incense, traces of rituals long abandoned. In the center of the hall stood a mosaic fractured by time. He crouched, brushing away dust until the image emerged. Two figures chained together by light and shadow, their hands joined across a divide. His heart thundered. This was no coincidence. The mosaic bore the same spiral mark that burned on his skin. His breath caught, his chest aching. "She is not only mine," he whispered to the empty air. "She is destiny itself." Yet the ruins did not merely confirm his hope. They warned him. Along the walls, murals showed battles where lovers brought kingdoms to ruin, their passion spilling rivers of blood. In every story, one of the pair fell, sometimes by enemy hands, sometimes by the others. The air grew colder as he traced those painted figures, his heart twisting. Was his devotion salvation, or the seed of catastrophe? He sank to his knees before the mosaic, fists pressed to the floor. If the price of her freedom is the fall of kingdoms, then let the kingdoms fall. If her breath costs the blood of the world, then let the world bleed. His vow echoed through the empty temple, and the stones shivered as though they had been waiting for someone to say it aloud. That night, as the moon spilled pale light across the forest, the girl sat in her hollow with the bone key pressed to her lips. Her body still trembled from the chain's punishment, but her thoughts would not quiet. She closed her eyes and felt him again, the stranger whose voice had shaken her walls, the pulse on her skin that did not belong to her. "If you are real," she whispered into the silence, "then tell me I am not only chains. Tell me I am more than a secret the world once buried." Across the forest, he sat beneath the broken arches of the temple, back against the cold stone, watching the stars scatter like shards of glass. He heard her whisper not with his ears, but in the marrow of his bones. His hand twitched, reaching toward the night sky as though it could stretch across distance. "You are not forgotten," he answered softly. "You are fire in the dark, and I will not stop until I find you." His words carried into her chest, and for the first time in years, she felt warmth spread through her veins. She touched the chains again, but this time the pain was less sharp. They thrummed, as though reluctant to admit they were listening. The warmth in her body frightened her, but it was a fear unlike any she had known. It was the fear of wanting, of daring. She pressed her forehead to her knees and whispered, "If you come to me, you will burn. If you stay away, I will die." What cruelty is this? To need what might destroy us both. The night deepened, heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. Somewhere in the shadows the hunters stirred again, their skeletal bodies restless. But for that brief moment, chains and distance could not silence her heart. She allowed herself to imagine the impossible. Lips against hers, a hand steadying her trembling body, a voice telling her she was not alone. The prison was darker than usual, its silence heavy with expectation. The girl felt it before she saw it, the tremor of footsteps, uneven, hesitant. When the guardian appeared, her cloak drawn tight, eyes swollen from tears unshed, the girl already knew something had shifted. The air itself clung to the woman's skin like guilt, and guilt had a scent, bitter, like iron steeped in old water. "You've changed," the girl murmured, her voice sharp as flint, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. The guardian's lips parted, but no words came at first. She had been mother, jailer, confessor, betrayer, all of these at once, and tonight the masks slipped. She stepped closer, bone key in hand, but her shoulders sagged beneath invisible weight. "They forced me," the guardian whispered finally, her throat constricted with shame. "The council knows he seeks you. They threatened me with your death if I did not reveal the path. I told them where he walks." The words spilled like blood, raw and irreversible. The girl's heart hammered in her chest, her breath shallow, chains tightening in rhythm with her rising fury. Her voice broke like glass, sharp and fragile all at once. "All these years, you swore you were my shield, and now, you hand me to the wolves?" Her eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. She straightened her spine, though every nerve in her body screamed betrayal. "Tell me, was I ever anything more than a weapon you were too afraid to wield?" The guardian fell to her knees, hands trembling, clutching the hem of the girl's chains. "I tried to love you as a daughter," she confessed, choking on the words. "But I was weak, and weakness has cost us both. Forgive me, or hate me, but live. Please live." Her sobs echoed in the hollow, mingling with the low hum of the awakened chains. The hunters entered like a storm of bones, their forms scraping the stone, their breath the sound of 1,000 knives dragged across marble. The girl's chains throbbed with power, tugging her toward them as if they recognized their own kind. She staggered back, fury and terror twined in her chest. The guardian stood between her and the hunters, arms spread, though her body shook like a candle in the wind. "You will not have her!" the guardian cried, her voice breaking, staff raised though she knew it was useless. The hunters surged, their claws slicing air. One strike sent her flying against the wall, blood darkening the stones. The girl screamed, her heart tearing in two, but her chains yanked her forward until she collapsed, her wrists burning with fire. The leader stepped from the shadows, towering, its ribcage pulsing with faint blue flame. Its voice was not a sound, but a vibration in her skull. "You were hidden, child, but never forgotten. Come now, fulfill what you were made for." Her knees buckled beneath the weight of its words, her chest crushed by terror and recognition. For the first time, she wondered if her destiny was never freedom, but servitude. "No," she gasped, forcing air into her lungs, clinging to the spark she felt through her wrist. "I am not yours." Her defiance cracked the air, but the leader only laughed, its hollow sound rattling her bones. With a sweep of its hand, the chains tightened, lifting her from the ground. Her body dangled, her vision darkening at the edges. Through the haze of pain, she heard her guardian's broken voice. "Fight, child! You are not what they made you." But the words barely pierced the roar of blood in her ears. The hunters closed in, dragging her toward the waiting maw of shadow beyond the door. Far away, the mate staggered through the forest, his body still raw from battle with his mentor. Each step was agony, but worse than pain was the sudden emptiness that hollowed his chest. He felt her vanish, not die, not yet, but vanish, as though her light had been swallowed whole. He fell to his knees, gasping, clawing at the spiral mark as it seared his skin. "No, no, not now," he whispered, shaking with rage and fear. The forest around him seemed to lean closer, the trees creaking like voices in judgment. "If she is taken, if she is broken, then so am I." His voice cracked, wild with desperation. He slammed his fist into the earth, blood seeping between his knuckles. The soil responded, trembling, roots rising to coil around his wrist as if answering a plea he hadn't spoken. Visions flooded his mind. Her chains, her screams, the silver fire of the hunters. And then, deeper still, a choice whispered through his marrow. Take the blood oath, embrace the shadow that sleeps in you, or lose her forever. He had been warned since childhood of the cost, that to take the oath was to bind himself to darkness, to carry a curse that would never die. His heart warred against itself, torn between fear of what he might become and the certainty that without her, he was already nothing. If curse is the price, he hissed, then let the curse be mine. I will not let her suffer alone. He pressed his palm into the bleeding soil, and the roots bit into his flesh, winding like living brands. The pain was blinding, filling his lungs with fire, his veins with cold shadow. His scream split the night, a sound half human, half something far older. The forest bent under the weight of his transformation, leaves blackening, the air heavy with iron and smoke. He collapsed forward, trembling, eyes now burning with a light that did not belong to him. The fortress of shadows loomed like a wound in the world, its towers of bone rising against the bleeding sky. The girl was dragged into its heart, her chains bound to a throne of obsidian. The hunters circled like vultures, their hollow chants vibrating through her chest. She closed her eyes, summoning his presence, praying the bond was not broken. And then the walls shook. A scream rolled through the fortress. Not hers, but his. He burst through the gates, wreathed in shadow and flame, his blade dripping darkness, his eyes burning like suns eclipsed. The hunters shrieked, scattering, but the leader rose to meet him, its massive form blotting out the light. You should not have come, it thundered. You are already ours. Steel clashed against bone, sparks flying, the sound deafening. Each strike from his blade cracked stone, his movements fueled by desperation and fury. But with every blow, the darkness within him clawed deeper, whispering hunger, urging him to kill not just his enemies, but everything in his path. He gritted his teeth, sweat and blood streaming down his face. I am not yours. I fight for her alone. The girl strained against her throne, the chains biting into her skin until blood ran freely. Don't lose yourself, she cried, her voice raw, carrying across the battlefield. You are more than this curse. You are mine. Her words struck him deeper than any blade. His grip steadied, his resolve crystallizing. For her, he would not surrender. The guardian, half dead, stumbled into the hall, staff clutched weakly in hand. She hurled herself between the girl and the advancing hunters, her body a frail wall of flesh against claws of bone. You will not touch her, she roared, summoning the last of her strength. Light burst from her, blinding, burning half the horde to ash. Her body collapsed, but her defiance lingered, a shield carved in sacrifice. The battlefield trembled, light and shadow colliding, the fortress groaning as if the world itself rejected their clash. The girl felt the chains squeeze tighter, demanding her surrender, whispering ancient promises of power and ruin. Her skin burned, her veins lit with fire, until she was more flame than flesh. He fought the leader with everything left in him, his blade singing, his body a storm of shadow and blood. But every strike consumed him further, the curse gnawing, eager to devour the man she loved. She saw it, the way his eyes flickered with hunger, how his hands trembled with killing rage. If you break me free only to lose yourself, she thought, tears spilling, then I will have gained nothing. The chains spoke in her mind, a chorus of voices, ancient and merciless. One must be forgotten. One must be sacrificed. Only through loss can freedom come. Her heart cracked. She saw the truth, that destiny demanded blood, memory, or both. Yet for the first time, she dared to question destiny itself. Her voice rose above the chaos, sharp, blazing. No, we are not pawns. We will not choose which of us is erased. If the world fears our love, then let it tremble. We will bear the weight together. She reached for him, chains tearing her flesh, light and shadow exploding from her wounds. Their hands met across the battlefield, blood mingling, fire and darkness entwining. The fortress shattered in a roar of collapsing stone, hunters screaming as they dissolved into ash. The leader let out a final bellow before crumbling, its flame extinguished by their unity. The chains around her wrist cracked, splintered, then burst apart in a shockwave of light that shook the heavens. The silence after was deafening. They collapsed together on the ruins, trembling, their breaths shallow, eyes locked. For a long moment there were no words, only the pulse of two hearts beating as one. And then she whispered, soft as rain, "We chose us. And that is enough." The ruins smoldered in silence, smoke rising in thin spirals that curled toward the bruised sky. Where once the fortress had stood, only broken stone and scattered bones remained, a graveyard of shadows dissolved by light. The air tasted of iron and ash, bitter yet strangely clean, as if the world itself had exhaled after centuries of holding its breath. In the center of the devastation, they lay side by side, their hands still entwined, skin raw where chains had once cut deep. She stirred first, eyelids heavy, her breath uneven. Every movement ached, but the ache was proof of survival, and that alone was victory. Turning her head, she saw him, the man who had fought through curses and death to reach her. His chest rose and fell, shallow but steady, the curse still burning faintly in his veins. She brushed trembling fingers across his jaw, whispering, "You stayed. Even when the world tried to unmake you, you stayed." His eyes fluttered open, shadow still clinging to their depths. But when he looked at her, the darkness softened. "I told you," he rasped, voice raw from battle. "I'd carry the curse if it meant carrying you." He coughed, blood on his lips, but the smile that followed was brighter than the dawn breaking behind the ruins. She felt tears stream down her face, and for once, she did not hide them. Tears were proof that she was alive, proof that he was real. Around them, the land began to change. The ground cracked open, releasing streams of water long trapped beneath, washing away ash and blood. Grass pushed through soil, stubborn and green, while the wind carried the scent of rain instead of smoke. The fortress that had once consumed souls now gave birth to renewal, its destruction a seed from which new life grew. For the first time, the world reflected their survival instead of their imprisonment. She sat up slowly, gazing at the horizon. The sun rose, gold and crimson, its warmth brushing her skin like a kiss she had long been denied. She inhaled deeply, savoring the freedom of air untainted by stone. "So, this is what they tried to keep from me," she murmured, awe softening her voice. "Not power, not prophecy, just the sky, the earth, the right to exist." Her hand tightened around his. "And to exist with you." He leaned into her touch, his body trembling but unbroken. "Then let that be our vow," he said, his words quiet but firm, binding as any oath of blood. "Not to chains, not to destiny, to us." Together they rose from the ashes, not as prisoners or cursed lovers, but as survivors who had defied both prophecy and fear. And as they walked into the light of dawn, every step carried the echo of a choice that would never be forgotten. They had chosen each other, and that was enough.